There have been quite a few strange and sometimes frightening incidents in my life, and now I will tell you about one of them. About 4 years ago, when I was 16, an incident occurred that has caused me to check my door every night since. I check several times before going to bed to see if the door is locked, and it's very easy to remember the reason for this. That day, I invited a friend to stay over. I was living with my parents at the time, but they had gone to visit friends. So there were 3 of us at home. Me, my older brother, who was 17 at the time, and my friend. My brother hung out with us for a while and then went to bed because he had to get up early in the morning. My friend and I sat in my room, watched YouTube, chatted about nothing in particular, and had a great time. Around 2 in the morning, my friend started to feel very sleepy and quickly fell asleep on the bed. I didn't feel like sleeping at all, so I continued watching videos on my computer, sitting in front of the window. Suddenly, I heard a strange noise outside the house, which I didn't pay any attention to at first. The neighbor's cats often climb onto our coal shed at night, and it is covered with sheet metal that makes a ringing sound. Each time they climb up, there is a dull metallic ringing sound, and that was the sound I heard then. Then, about 5 minutes later, a barely noticeable shadow flashed past the window directly in front of my monitor. It happened so quickly that in any other situation I would have decided that I had simply imagined it. But 2 suspicious events in a row within a few minutes seemed too strange to me to simply forget. I immediately got up from my chair and went to the front door to check the locks and calm myself down a little. And damn it, neither of the 2 locks was locked. The door was actually almost completely open. Then something happened that nearly scared me out of my wits and made me realize how serious the situation was. After locking both locks, I decided to turn on the light in the yard and look through the peephole to make sure everything was safe. When I looked through the peephole, right in front of it was a fucking face staring at me from the street. I screamed in surprise, cursed a couple of times, and jumped away from the door, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. Behind the door was the face of a man in his mid-20s or 30s, standing very close to the peephole. I looked through the peephole again to get a better look at the stranger, and at that moment he spoke. The stranger asked me to let him into the house, saying that he needed help and that everything was very bad. But the most frightening thing was not his words, but his emotions, or rather the complete and frightening lack of emotion. The stranger's words sounded very convincing, and there was real fear in his voice as if his life depended on it. But his face showed no emotion at all, except for the movement of his lips, and his gaze was completely empty. It was unrealistically scary. I just stood there silently looking at him through the peephole, not moving. With every passing second, he begged louder and louder to be let in, his voice rising, his panic growing. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, and when I turned around, I saw my brother standing in the hallway. I didn't even notice right away that the stranger behind the door had fallen silent, because I was completely distracted by my brother's appearance. My brother asked me, "What are you doing?" I replied that someone had climbed into our yard and was wandering around there. After that, I looked through the peephole again, but there was no one in front of the door anymore. The yard seemed completely empty. What the hell? I thought, feeling a new wave of anxiety and confusion rising inside me. I told my brother that I had just seen a person outside the door and heard him asking to be let in. My brother believed me and said that he had also noticed someone at the window, but decided that it was just his imagination. After that, we turned off the lights in the house and looked out the windows, trying to find the stranger in the yard again. But there was no one to be seen on the street. The yard looked completely empty, as if no one had been there for a long time. Suddenly, my friend let out a wild scream from my room, and my brother and I immediately jumped up. We rushed into the room and saw that same man standing by the window in my room. He stood with the same emotionless face, but his gaze had changed, from empty to predatory, piercing. Even though the lights were on in the yard and it was dark in the house, he simply couldn't see us. He still looked me straight in the eye, and I literally froze in horror, unable to move. And then he showed his first and only emotion the whole time. His face stretched into a broad smile. He raised his hand to his face, and in his hand was a big, fat knife. Slowly bringing the knife to the window, he began to methodically tap the glass with the tip, continuing to smile eerily. At that moment, my brother was already on the phone with the dispatcher, calling the police to our house. I still don't understand why we didn't do this earlier. It didn't even occur to anyone to call. As soon as my brother finished talking to the dispatcher, we ran to another room, away from that window. None of us had the slightest desire to stay in a room with that lunatic standing outside the window. The police arrived about 10 minutes later, but there was no one in the yard anymore. The lunatic had managed to escape. Based on our descriptions, the police drew up a sketch of the stranger, then contacted our parents. The police stayed with us until our parents came home and made sure everything was quiet. Despite the fact that descriptions of this madman were posted all over the city, he was never caught. How grateful I am to my intuition for guessing to check if the door was locked at that very moment. And to my father for his caution. There are bars on every window in our house, and that saved us once. Who knows what would have happened if those bars hadn't been there and he had been able to just climb into the house?